My name is Patricia, and thank you for having me today. This presentation is on geospatial data application, specifically the AIS data Dan was talking about for an intelligent waterway transportation system. Now, the figure on the right might look familiar. Usually you see these for the roadways. You have green where there's free flow traffic, up to orange or red where there's congestion. And we're now doing the same for the waterways. So in almost real time, we can say where's their congestion, what will be your expected travel time, and for the vessels traveling the waterways. So one of the motivations, why would we do this for the waterways? Well, first, 232 billion worth of cargo transited America's inland waterways. So it's a very important mode of transportation for commerce, and it does have other uses such as recreation. And then also, why provide travel times? Well, this is just similar to why you use travel times for either maybe you take public transit or maybe you drive, but it helps inform like when do you need to leave by to make sure you're at your location on time. Where are there areas of congestion? If there are areas with a lot of recurring congestion, how much is it? And then maybe there's some kind of operations or maintenance actions can be used to improve the traffic flow. And then also for real-time situational awareness. The figure on the left, this is a figure of a tow pushing barges on the Mississippi River. And then on the right, this is a dewatered lock. So the locks are used where the elevation of the river is at different stages. And this one's dewatered. They were doing some construction on it to improve it. Data source, Dan went over this, so I'm just going really quickly. A few things I just wanted to point out. The data, so the vessels get their locations via GPS. So every couple seconds, they know their location, and there's a timestamp associated with that location. And then they're constantly broadcasting out this information. And the Corps and the Coast Guard, the U.S. Coast Guard, put out receiving towers that can pick up this data. So if there's no receiver close by, the data won't be picked up by the Army Corps or the Coast Guard. So there are areas where we actually don't have the data. And the data is stored in archives, so we can access it historically. So the method to estimate travel times, I'm just going over this because that explains how we're using Esri. So step one, we collect and plot vessel movement data, the AIS data. So the little figure shows if the blue is the waterway, and then the orange would be the plot of the vessel tracks. The second step is define the waterway network. So we need to have a network in order to do our analysis. So everything from drawing the network, where are origins, where are destinations, what are segments of the waterway, where are there confluences with other waterways. It's really important to have a waterway network that's continuous, there's no overlap, and also that has a good naming convention. The third step is we define like the entrance and exit of each segment of the network, for which we then give individual travel times. So here we geofence the beginning and the end, so the section in between, that's where we'll give travel times for. Step 4 is the travel time then would be, you get the entrance time and you collect the exit time, and then the last step then is the travel time estimates, the difference between these two. This method is what they use also for roadways. So some of the challenges. The first is the data spatial coverage. As I mentioned, we know we don't have coverage everywhere. We actually, before some of the studies this year, we hadn't quantified where there were locations with no coverage and like how bad the coverage was, or where was it okay, or where was it 100%. So that was an effort this year. Here you can see this is the Ohio River. This section we have on the pink dots or where there are AIS data points. This was a year worth, 2018, a whole year worth of AIS data points. The blue underneath is the channel reach. That's our waterway network. And it's segmented into about 1 mile segments for which we'll get the travel time for each segment. And then you can just see by looking at it, there are places where there's more density than others. And this is important for us to know, because if an area doesn't have good coverage, we'll know that affect the accuracy of the travel time estimates, or we'll know where to expect that there won't be any data available. For the data spatial coverage analysis, we use ArcMap 10.71 software program, Esri. So we used it we were able to overlay the network. The network is called the National Channel Framework. That's available publicly. Was the Waterway network we used. It's already available and developed. We chose that mostly to save time and resources, that there was already a network developed. And then we were able to compare, we overlaid the AIS data points, and from that we were able to get the counts for each reach within the network. The counts were compared to ground truth data. So we had manual reports of how many vessels transited the reaches. So we were able to compare that to compute the coverage rate. So you can see on the right, the reach IDs. So this is each of those small 1 mile segments has a name. We joined these with the location. So these were all for the Ohio River, the river miles, which more people are familiar with than the reach names, and then the coverage rate. So green, we had great coverage. Then we see the red, orange, yellow are areas with less coverage. These are these are important for us to identify. One is because we'd like to improve coverage to 100% of the entire waterway. We might be able to, so from this, we'll identify where we should put up more of those receiving towers. And then it's also for us to know, like, where will there be errors in our travel time estimates, because we're not getting full data, so we won't know all the transits that pass through, or maybe not even any of them. Some issues with the network. One, the naming. So the network we use, we decided to go with it because it was already developed. For example, the Ohio River is 981 miles. That's just one of the inland waterways. So it's extensive area to make to geofence into segments. So that's why we decided to use the already existing network. Some of the issues was it wasn't made for transportation analysis. So like the naming conventions different. So we're probably going to rename it for our uses. Also, there are some areas where the shape files didn't cover the waterway fully, or there was overlap, or the naming convention was repeated. So we would actually go in manually and edit those geofences. This is just an example of the output. This is what you'd get for roadways. On the bottom are names of reaches. So this is actually starting by Pittsburgh on the Ohio River and traveling downstream towards the western US. And it just has for each reach, which each reach is about a mile. There's some exceptions. We'll see the average speed and the travel time. So, and we also get the total travel time. So this can be useful for a vessel operator, so they know how long to expect their time should be. They could compare weekday versus weekend, summer versus fall, see what would be the differences in their travel times. And then it's also good for the Army Corps of Engineers and the US Coast Guard. We can see if there are anywhere locations where there's constantly high travel times that we wouldn't expect to be. So maybe those are locations of bottlenecks or locations that are unsafe that the vessels have to travel slowly through, and we can look to see if there's anything we can do to mitigate or fix those locations. And then just some challenges, the amount of data. We receive AIS data. We receive 100,000 to 200,000 messages per hour. That's via a live stream of the data. Like I was saying, the spatial coverage is less than 100%. The vessel sample size, so if we're receiving all the data or not. And then I just listed some potential solutions and future expansion of our travel time analysis. And one of the ones I want to point out, we want to start using it for travel time prediction. So we can say next week, this is the expected travel time. And then if you have any questions, we'll save them for the end, but feel free to email me. We have a white paper that's free, publicly available on the spatial coverage analysis if anyone would like to read more about it. Thank you.